Hello and welcome to Channels Book Club. I'm Olakunle Kasumo. Welcome to the show where we do all things books. We talk to writers, authors, publishers, policymakers, and book lovers. We do just about anything imaginable as long as it's related to books and it's fun, engaging, and educative. We've got a show on our hands today, so please don't go away. So who is the richest man in the world? I'm sure you are going to say Jeff Bezos. Or if I ask, who is the richest man in human history? Now, that's debatable. Some will say Jeff, some will say Bill Gates, some will say Rockefeller, and all sorts of names usually pop up. But there is one that a lot of Africans probably don't know about. Mansa Musa. Some historians will argue very strongly that he was the richest man in human history. He ruled the Empire of Mali between 1312 and 1337. That's a long time ago. People who say there was never any African civilization, they need to look into history. 1312 to 1337. That was a period when Mali produced the largest quantity of gold in the world, and that was the basis of Mansa Musa's wealth. He was a powerful, wealthy Muslim emperor or king, as you may want to call him. He was the 10th king of Mali back then. He was very wealthy. Now, a lot of Africans don't know some of the stories. You could go on and on and on. So many stories in African history. Now, there is a couple that is into telling those stories and putting them in various formats, including books for African children particularly, but not just African children, children all over the world, to learn African history. Amazing project, absolutely amazing project. And the gentleman, the husband, is our guest today. And we are going to be meeting him and you're going to be enjoying an interview we had with him. But, I mean, when I go through in my head the project they are doing, it's something I've been thinking about for so many years. Seeing them doing it practically now really excites me. So they are telling so many important African stories, putting them in book form, music, video, and all those things. And it's really, really helping a lot of young people all over the world to learn African history. So we've got Dele as our guest today. Let's get to meet with him and then enjoy the interview that we had with him.
Dele and Louisa Olafuyi are both marketers with experience working for top businesses. The couple met in London in 2013 and moved to Cambridge in 2017 when Dele completed his MBA at Cambridge University George Business School and Louisa worked as a senior product marketer at Cambridge University Press. They are the founders of Kunda Kids, a London-based publishing and creative media studio which produces books, songs and animations that are fun and educative for children aged 0 to 8 years. Their published children's books include Mansa Musa Builds a School, Shaka Zulu Learns to Dance, Queen Kitami Makes Friends, and Quinya Saves the Golden Stool. Oladele Olafuyi is our guest today on Channels Book Club this week.
Dele, nice to have you on Channels Book Club.
Thank you very much, Kunle. Thanks for having me here today.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, so excited about it.
How is the UK, lockdown and all that?
Oh, lockdown has been interesting, a bit difficult. But the interesting thing about lockdown is it's kind of sparked up the creativity in my family between my wife and I. And that's kind of why we're here
were
today.
able to. I've heard that a lot. I mean, maybe we should do a compilation of authors or writers who produced their works during the the COVID-19 lockdown. Because I've had so many writers tell me that during the lockdown they were able to focus and write, and then eventually their books came out.
Yeah, that would be such a great idea, right? Because For me, I work in London, but when we started this project, I was living in Cambridge. So every morning I need to get out of the house by 7 to get on the train, get to work by 9. Leaving by 7 means I need to be up by like 6, 6:30, especially when you have a little one. Sometimes you don't sleep at night. So like I never had time to be creative. But lockdown, I'm kind of a morning person. So once I wake up in the morning, my brain starts to work. So imagine having to get up at 6 and I have the luxury of spending 6:30 till 7:30 or 8 on the bed. My brain just starts thinking. And I think that's where a lot of the creativity came from. Yeah.
Wow, impressive. Now, what you have here, I have to say that, you are filling a gap that I've always thought about for a long time, that when are we going to have people produce stories, African stories for our children? If you look at the range of books available for our children, 95% are written overseas, produced overseas, and about foreigners. So what you're doing here is fantastic, fantastic. For viewers who are out there, let's try and explain this.
Just a quick one there, right? When you talk about the percentage of books, it's actually so true. I live in London, and in the UK, just 2% of children's books that were published last year had a lead black character.
Just 2%.
Just 2%.
A lead black character.
A lead black character. Another interesting fact, an animal is 6 times more likely to be the protagonist in a children's book story than a black character.
Coming in, that's a tough one. An animal.
An animal. So you see, I'm not going to call names, right? But an animal. It might just be a book about a lion, a tiger, a dog,
rather
a donkey,
rather than a black person being the protagonist.
Yeah, and a lot of people were trying to use animals to address the topic of diversity instead of actually using like black characters. And so the industry has been a bit tricky, right? And unfortunately, when children's literature fails to show proper representation of the world, it does breed a lot of ignorance in kids. And then kids see the books that they are reading as the representation of what the world is, right? And those are some of the things that we want to address at Kunda Kids.
Wow. Dilly, well done.
Thank you very much.
And thank you. Okay, so what you are doing here is you are taking certain characters in African history.
Correct.
Using their stories, fictionalizing their stories.
Correct.
And putting them in book form for children. That's what you're doing.
Correct, yes. Now, because we started doing that, so my wife and I founded Kunda Kids last year, and there was a point that we had the trigger, and it was really around when the old Black Lives Matter thing started, when George Floyd was murdered. That was because I spent a lot of time thinking, like, what can we do? What can we do? And my wife and I started talking, and we're like, let's see what we can do to inspire the next generation, right? Let's see if we can at least start helping kids to see themselves more in books, and that way they can grow up and build more self-confidence in themselves. So that was how the whole project started. That was the trigger for the whole book series. Now, looking at the books themselves, right, we decided to start with African history because when you look at books generally, typically what you realize is you just have black books, but not so many writers on a global scale are pushing African stories, and African stories are not very commercial. But we know part of being African, storytelling is embedded in our culture. It's embedded in who we are as Africans. And that's what we want to do at Kunda Kids, bring the best of African stories to the world. Not just for black kids, for everybody, because we feel all kids need to have proper representation in their library. Your library is not complete if you don't have African stories in it. And that's where we're coming from at Kunda Kids.
Delia, you don't know heartbroken I am that we lose so much of our history.
Yes.
We lose so much of our history. I mean, and what you've done here, your 4 books, the 4 characters here, Mansa Musa, the richest man in history.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Undoubtedly.
Yes, he is. So I'll tell you. I'll tell you a little bit about the 4 books. Right. We said for our first project, Lakunda Kids, let's teach kids about African history, right? And we felt one of the first places to start teaching kids about this history is to tell them about great people that have lived in the past in Africa.
In Africa.
Yes, because African history is not so well taught in schools. You know, I'm not a curriculum person so much, but a lot of times when they're teaching history, there's a lot of colonialization, racism, and those are issues that we don't touch on at Kunda Kids because we know kids just want to have fun and we'd write interesting stories for kids while introducing them to these great people. So I'll tell you about Mansa Musa. The first book, Mansa Musa Builds a School. The story is inspired by Mansa Musa from Mali, who is the richest man in history. His net worth was valued at about $400 billion.
$400 billion.
Yes, $400 billion. Fun fact about Mansa Musa, when he traveled, because he was a devout Muslim, when he traveled to Mecca on pilgrimage, he passed through Egypt, and the amount of gold he spent in Egypt devalued the currency in Egypt for 12 years because gold became so common that everybody had gold, and then there was so much inflation for 12 years. And that was the impact of one man, what he spent. And we feel, I'll just take a step back. I did my MBA in Cambridge George Business School, and there was a time I asked my classmates, who is the richest man in history? They were like, oh, it's Rockefeller.
Rockefeller.
Yeah. And I said, go and do your research and come back tomorrow. And they came back and said, oh, we saw someone called Mansa Musa. And I'm like, yes, the richest man in history is from Mali. So what we are doing at Kunda Kids is we write the stories about these people so that kids get to know their names, right? And then as parents are also reading the stories to their kids, the parents to go to do research. And we've gotten so much feedback from parents. Like, I never knew there was someone like Mansa
Musa.
And then the second book, you see...
Was it Mansa Musa that built the great library, the Timbuktu library?
Yes.
And in Mali.
Yes, and that was where we took the inspiration for Mansa Musa Builds a School. Because Mansa Musa built a very big university in Mali. It was one of the biggest universities in the world at that time. It had so many books. Scholars from all over the world traveled to Mali to learn about, to learn mathematics, to learn everything from that university. But a lot of this is not well thought.
Not at all.
Yes.
The history we learn, the history our children learn, is post-colonization history.
Yes.
After the British came here, say, take Nigeria for instance. You know, the average child might be able to tell you about the amalgamation in 1914 and then independence in 1960. You know, But the history of Africa, the history of Nigeria, of Africa before the Europeans came in here, nobody talks about it.
Yes, and it's actually quite sad, right? I learned about the Great Wall of Benin in my adult life. But historians have said the Great Wall of Benin was actually way bigger than the Great Wall of China, which we all know about. Yeah. Right? And these are some of the themes that we're going to be touching on in the series. Future books. Yes.
Please do.
Because we want kids to learn aspects of history. We'll talk about Great Zimbabwe. Like, we talk about all these great empires in Africa's history, which we don't talk about so much. Yeah. And these are things we want to start introducing to kids in a very fun way. That's why we write fictional stories.
And it's well illustrated. Yes. I mean, the illustrations are fantastic. Yeah, kids can really enjoy. And by the way, the Benin Wall right now, sadly, is gone.
Yes.
Nothing left. Nothing left in Benin right now. Shaka Zulu learns to dance. That's another story here. And then you've got Quinya saves the golden stool. And then you've got Queen Kitami. Tell me about Quinya.
Yes, so Quinya saves the golden stool. Quinya Asantewa, that's her full name, of the Ashanti Kingdom in
Ghana,
Ghana.
modern
Yes,
Ghana.
modern day Ghana. Quinya Asantewa was the queen mother of the kingdom, and there was a real war of the golden stool where Quinya actually fought a battle to save the golden stool when invaders came. We took inspiration from that to write a story about Quinya saving the golden stool. And we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback about that book. I'll tell you about Shaka Zulu Learns to Dance,
Shaka Zulu learns to
which
dance.
is most people's favorite book, right? Shaka Zulu is someone that is described as a complex character in history, right? And, you know, Shaka Zulu's story is all about wars, fighting battles. But I know so many South Africans, they are some of the most fun people I know in this world. And then South Africans, they have the Zulu warrior dance. So we took inspiration from South African culture about the Zulu warrior dance to write a story about Shaka Zulu learning to dance because we want kids to learn about Shaka Zulu, right? And then the fourth book, Queen Kitami Makes Friends, really wonderful
Tami of
story.
Uganda.
Yes. Queen Kitami was a very beautiful queen in Uganda. My wife is from Uganda, so
Oh,
you know that to be a story
Louisa,
from
that's her
Uganda
name,
there.
right?
Yes,
Louisa.
Louisa. We go to Uganda a lot. We actually visited a kind of a monument of Queen Kitami. One of the times we went to Uganda. So we took inspiration from Queen Kitami and we wrote a beautiful story about Queen Kitami making friends. And these are really, really lovely stories. I shouldn't say this, but that's actually my favorite book
That's your favorite book.
because it touches based on a subject that applies to everybody at every stage of their
Not because it has
life.
Ugandan roots.
And also maybe because it's about Uganda.
Mansa Musa is my favorite, by the way. I love the Mansa Musa story.
Yes.
Great rich man riding, into town and asking a local girl for,
yes.
and then eventually building a school.
Yeah.
And all that. So this is good work. The
you.
illustrations are lovely.
Thank you.
They are illustrated by Isabel
Isabel Irabo and Tiolu Yoloye.
Yuloye.
The young Nigerian girls, if I tell you they're still in university, you wouldn't believe.
Wow.
We got fortunate that ASU was on strike, so they had
They had time to do some work.
they had time to work on our project. But they're really talented.
Obviously,
super
from
good
these illustrations, obviously.
Yes.
So, I mean, let's get our kids reading this. Oh, yeah, government officials out there in Nigeria, I just wish that they can look at people like you, pay attention to people like you, get people like you in to create more books like this that can go into our schools. It has to be a deliberate strategy.
Yes.
And not just books, documentary series, videos, and then our historical monuments in the cities,
Yes.
Get them alive again and
Yes.
get children to go there, to observe them and take notes and make it part of their scores, in school. I've seen that in a lot of countries overseas where children, go to maybe public libraries or museums and all that. And you see them with their notebooks, writing down. And I ask, what are you guys doing here? They say, it's part of our school course.
Yes, yes. And that's why at Kunda Kids, what we're focusing on right now in our product roadmap is we want to inspire the next generation through books, right? Through songs and through animations. Because all this...
Books, songs, and
animations. Yeah, and why we're doing that is it's a gap that we see in the market. That there are a lot of people creating all this content, but we want to help a lot of these content creators. At Kunda Kids, we're collaborators. As long as you're telling African stories, we'll work with you and we'll help you get your stories out, get your music out. When you look at songs, for instance, there are a lot of nursery rhymes and things that we sang growing up. And we want to find a way to bring all these nursery rhymes, make them modern, relevant, that parents can enjoy it with some feeling of nostalgia and also enjoy singing along with their kids while we encourage kids to learn more about African culture and African history.
Dele, thank you so much. It's been nice having this chat with you.
Yeah.
And once again, well done the work you're doing.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being here. Really appreciate the
Thanks for joining us on Channels Book Club.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. So many great stories that we need to tell, not just Nigerian children or African children, but children all over the world. There are great African stories that need to be told, and kudos to people like Dele who are telling such stories. If you are out there and you can do this, we need as many hands as possible. These stories just absolutely need to be told. Even in Nigerian history alone, you can imagine the number of stories that can be told that our children do not know today. So kudos to Dele and people like him. Up next is a reading. Please stay tuned.
My name is Mishak Ilobi, and I'm from Nkwele Zunaka in Anambra State. I was born in Sabongeri Zaria to southern parents, and my first 10 years were spent up there. I wrote this book, Living Between Worlds, as my autobiography, capturing the different phases of my life journey thus far. Let me read to you from page 8 of this book, speaking to my early days in Zaria. I bent over to resume my search for my shoe when I eventually heard the nearby roar of a train. And suddenly, the woman's antics in the rain made sense. I immediately jumped out of the railway tracks and into her waiting arms, just in time for the train to roar past with its horn blaring. Shivering in fright and shock, I cried into the hands and bosom of the stranger as she cuddled me and wept in sheer relief. She took me to her stall and offered me a bean cake that she was selling by the roadside. That Hausa woman saved my life. Me, the TCK, the third culture kid, and with that action permanently erased from my heart the us versus them mentality. To this day, whenever anyone speaks in a derogatory manner about those houses to my hearing, the image of that Hausa mother springs to mind. In those moments, I confirm to myself that I am one with the Hausas and with any other Nigerian tribe. I refuse to see them as the others, because at heart, I identify with that Hausa woman who on that day substituted as my mother, groaning in the rain to see me safely delivered to her.
Well, this is where we have to draw the program to a close. As always, we'll be delighted to get your feedback through any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. I'm Olakunle Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.